All right, mate, how you doing? Welcome back to another episode of IMO. In today's video, we're talking about Project Restart, the plan to bring the Premier League back as soon as June 12th to maybe June 19th. Pretty soon. I'm going to tell you why I think this is a terrible idea. It definitely shouldn't happen, and how people like me and you watching this could almost certainly stop it happening, but we probably won't. Yes, that's right. We're talking about Project Restart. The Premier League is supposedly, potentially returning, albeit in a very different guise to what we're used to, behind closed doors. But just to get the Premier League finished, they're going to have these games being played in very odd conditions. Now, is this the right idea? Fundamentally, before we go into the many different things we've got to talk about in this video, I think it's the wrong thing to do. I want to put this on the record right now. Now, some of you might be thinking, hang on, a couple of months ago, you were the one complaining about your league, #league, being called off. These two things can work together. Let me tell you why. Okay, me and many other chairmen across the country were pretty outspoken about our disappointment with the decision of the FA and the powers that be to end the lower league seasons officially, not just ending them, nulling and voiding them. No promotions, no relegations within 6 days of the first postponed fixture. 6 days, whereas there's still no decision being made about professional football. So I think that was a terrible idea. Maybe it might have been the right decision to make, but it was definitely made too soon. And the nulling and voiding was definitely the wrong decision, in my opinion. But we're not going to talk about non-league today. We're talking about the Premier League. And the reason we're talking about both these things together is all the different people that complained about that decision, none of them, to a man or woman, thought that football should be played any time before at least the potential start of next season. We're talking like August, maybe July with friendlies. No one was talking about football being played in June. No one. And that's because everyone had safety as a priority. However, in this instance, the Premier League, money talks. And money is being prioritised over people's safety. And we've got to this point now in society in general where we need to make a decision. And by we, I mean the people representing us at the top. Is what is more important, the economy or public safety? Because I don't think we can protect both. And at the start of this video, I said that I think people like you and me could stop this happening. And let me explain that a little bit more. Basically, the reason this is happening is because the people that pay all the money for TV rights want to get some kind of value for that money they've spent, or they're going to ask for it back. The Premier League and the teams involved, and the Championship, is not just the Premier League, the Championship's looking at an even sooner potential restart. These guys want to try and get some of that money in because, understandably, they're expecting that important money to help the running of their club. If they don't get it, clubs may go under. I'm not taken away from the importance of that. Clubs may be really financially hurt. I'm going to get on to how that could potentially be avoided in the future if football finally sorts itself out financially. But ultimately, these TV companies that have spent so much money in their rights want to get some sort of value, and the Premier League want to give it to them. Now, what is this value? This value is about advertising. They spend all the money on the games so they can get the games and they can advertise around the games and make even more money, potentially, than what they're paying out in the billions of Premier League rights. What is advertising? Advertising is the ability to monetize a viewer, okay? Us watching it. They want to be able to advertise to us. What do they need to be able to advertise to us? Us to watch. So, essentially what I'm saying is, if the people who actually are the monetizable part of football, the fans, decided this was too soon, and I think most reasonable people would agree, football should not be coming back when we still have the second highest death rate from COVID-19 in the entire world. Only USA has had more deaths and they've got a lot more people. So it's laughable that we're talking about football coming back. And we could stop it. Because if we all said, we ain't watching, right? If we all said, and it was made very clear to the Premier League and to the people paying for those rights, that we are not going to watch the games, it wouldn't happen because there'd be no value in it. But that's not going to happen. It's too much to expect. I'm a massive hypocrite. I'll be honest, because if this football comes back, I'm going to watch it. And why am I going to watch it? Because I'm a massive football fan and it comes down to FOMO, right? The fear of missing out. No one that's followed football for 30 years like I have or however long wants to miss out on what could be really important matches. I know it's mental. It doesn't make any sense. I'm talking about the health and safety of people in the world, but I'm also being honest with you. I will want to watch it. The Bundesliga is back this weekend. I'm probably watching it. Does that mean I think it should be coming back? No. But why should it be down to me? It is ultimately down to me. And the reason it's down to me and you guys watching is because the people at the top have let us down. The people at the top should not be entertaining the thought of bringing football back. And I'm going to explain in as much detail as possible in this video why that's not just me talking, emotionally or about general death tolls. I'm talking about why it doesn't work from a competitive level either. It doesn't work for the sport. No football should be being played unless we as a nation and as a world completely embrace that we don't care if people die. from this illness, from this pandemic. Unless we say people get it, fine. Because what happens normally, right, in normal football, is people can get the flu. And it's happened before. Whole teams have had outbreaks of the flu. They don't get the game off. Maybe an extenuating circumstance if the whole team was out. But if they're missing 2 or 3, even if it's key players, they just got to go with it. I remember back Tottenham when they had food poisoning. Okay, it's a different health issue, but they didn't get the game off. They had to play with players missing from food poisoning or players suffering from food poisoning. The difference in this instance is obviously what people are suffering from is super contagious and it's killing people. Now, I'm not saying people should be made to play with COVID-19. I'm saying the opposite of that. People shouldn't be made to play with the threat of even getting COVID-19. Now, as part of this Project Restart, they've proposed a loads of somewhat crazy measures to try and make it less likely people are going to suffer from COVID-19. These include disinfecting pitches at training. 5-a-side is the maximum amount of people that are allowed to train together. That's Premier League and Championship, probably other leagues as well. I'm not sure what the Bundesliga are doing. Physio and medical staff aren't allowed to do any one-to-one close treatment unless it's absolutely essential. If they do, they've got to wear PPE equipment. But most importantly, in order to be able to train with your team right now and potentially play in the restarted league, you have to be tested for COVID-19 twice a week. Right? That's a lot of tests. That's not just the players that are going to play. That's the players who are in the squad training with them. It's also the staff involved, right? Now, explain this to me. How can we be allocating that many tests when we still only have 30,000 per million of the population being tested right now? You might think, oh, well, that might be all we need to test because only so many people have this illness. Let me compare it to other countries for you. So we have 30,000 tests per million. Spain, who have had a very similar amount of cases as us, but less deaths, they are testing 50,000 per million of their population. That's almost double what we're doing. The US are testing more per million. Russia are testing more per million. Italy are testing more per million. Germany are testing more. Ireland are testing more. We are nowhere near level with the other countries in terms of how much we're testing and allowing people to find out if they've got it and if they need to isolate, etc. So how can we be in that state as a country and then go, but we're going to give all these tests to all these players? That doesn't make sense. That's not fair. But more importantly, what happens after that? If you get tested and you've got it, it comes back positive, you and everyone you've been training with and playing with has to self-isolate for 14 days, 2 weeks. We know that's the protocol. We understand why. So explain to me what's going to happen when one player involved in any of these 20 teams that have to come back gets the illness. Because it will happen. Someone's going to get it. Brighton have had 3 cases of it already, and they've not even been putting themselves out in training yet. They haven't restarted that yet. So one person gets it. That whole team has to self-isolate. They can't take part. So then what happens? Do those games not happen? And we go, we'll play all the games that don't involve Brighton or whatever team it is. And what happens if it happens to Salah? Now, I'm not saying any player is more important than the other. What I'm saying is, why are we ultimately restarting the Premier? Because there's stuff to play for, one of which is Liverpool's ability to potentially win the Premier League for the first time. If they lose their best player to COVID-19, not only can he not play, but it also means the whole club has to go into self-isolation. So Liverpool can't play. So they can't win their league. So we're basically doing all this on the assumption that no one will get it. It's just a pure numbers game. Someone's going to get it. They might already have it. They might turn up for their first day of training and test positive on that day. And the whole thing's falling apart. It doesn't make sense, guys. Now, I've talked about how we could potentially stop this happening by saying we're not going to watch it. I don't expect that to happen. I don't think enough fans can be expected. I think there'd be a lot that would, but I think a lot of fans want to watch it. And also, a lot of people need something to do. That's one of the justifications the government are using in bringing the Premier League back. They're saying it's to entertain the people and give a bit more of a sense of morale. Really, it's for money, let's be honest. But also, money is linked to morale. I can't, dispute that. If this does come back, clubs are going to get some of their money back. They're still expecting it to cost over 300 million in losses in terms of what's going to have to be returned to the TV companies. But if clubs do get some of this money, it means they're probably going to be able to keep more staff. And we're talking about not players. We're talking about the catering staff, the guys that work in the ticket office. We're talking about coaches. We're talking about people that need that money. And that is a good thing, of course, if we can do that and help the economy. And I'm open to that as much as I can be. But I'm just trying to look at the facts. And we're being told by our government to observe social distancing. We're being told to only go to work if it's a complete essential. All these things. Now, as part of the training measures, they're saying they can't tackle right now. No tackling in training, no contact of any form. Which I understand, social distancing. They're basically saying they have to train under social distancing. So even a goalkeeper can't come out and smother the ball if a striker's getting there. You've just got to let him shoot. Obviously, that's not going to happen in the games, right? The games are going to allow tackling and whatnot. So when the games happen in June 19th, does that mean social distancing has to be over? Because let me tell you this. If the government haven't done that, if the government haven't lifted all these rules, and then you watch TV and you see people tackling each other, you see people grabbing each other, celebrating when they score, you see a goalkeeper coming out to smother a player, then all hell's going to break loose. You can't expect the average man on the street to take what Boris Johnson is telling him seriously if you then watch it on TV. People do the opposite. But another way this could stop would be if the players spoke up. And I have heard quite a few players, putting their head above the parapet, and fair play to them, they're risking their own careers and their own relationship with their club, and they're saying, we're not sure we should be coming back. I know Aguero and Sterling have said it. I know Andros Townsend's expressed concern, as has his father. Okay, maybe Liverpool players haven't said it, and maybe they've got a horse in the race in this, and I'm not immune to that argument. I had a horse in the race in what I was saying about our league and other teams in our league. The hashtag United League that got called off in non-league football was saying, well, you're only saying that because you got a chance of promotion. Well, yeah, but that's because at this point in the season, there's a lot less teams left who stand to gain something from the football coming back. The team I support is West Ham United. They don't stand to gain anything. In fact, if the league is finished on a points per game based on home and away performances, West Ham get relegated. So you could argue it's in West Ham's interest to come back. You could also argue that no team's going to agree to come back unless relegation is taken off the cards. Which is what I said from day one, by the way. From day one, I have said promote and don't relegate. Reward the good teams, but don't punish the bad ones who haven't had a chance to finish their games. But I never said play games. I never said that. And no one I know, reasonable person, has come out and said we should be playing games now. But you do wonder if the footballers could get together, if enough of them really felt it wasn't in their interest. And there probably will be more of them that feel this way than don't feel this way because of the fact they don't stand to gain anything. In the Championship, less teams are pushing for promotion at this point to the Premier League. In the Premier League, less teams can qualify for Europe or win the league like Liverpool. So if they got together and kind of unionised and said, we're not playing, guys, we don't want to play, I don't know what the clubs could really do unless the advertisers and the TV companies were happy to essentially post a load of games that would be like the Liverpool games in the Cup this year when they played the kids. And even then, you're asking the kids to put themselves at risk, the younger players. Doesn't seem right. As soon as enough players speak up, I feel that this thing has to stop anyway. But there will be side effects if the football does come back. It won't just apply to football. All the government guidelines across the country, regardless of what industry it's in, will start to be affected and lifted and changed because people won't respect them. Here's another argument for you as well. Again, I'm talking from my perspective, but I think that's what you get. IMO is my opinion, right? I own a club. I run a club, right? And I came out and spoke very strongly about how I thought the league should be finished at a later date. But I always respected that football shouldn't get played. However, I've got to be honest, I'm human as well. I'm frustrated that my season wasn't finished. As every player that plays for our club, all the volunteers that help our club operate, anyone associated with Hashtag United, and not just us, all the great teams in non-league, particularly the ones that had a chance to get promoted, they all feel annoyed and maybe a little bit let down, but ultimately we understand because it's an unprecedented, crazy situation. And I don't envy the people that had to make these decisions on our behalf. However, as I mentioned, I am human. If I then see other leagues playing football, it's going to annoy me. I'm going to start to have feelings of anger. I'm going to start to have feelings of jealousy. I'm going to start to have feelings of why do they get to do it and I don't? Now, I know the reason. It's money. Teams in our league are less likely to sue. That's what it comes down to. But is that right for sport? We're talking about sporting integrity. I don't think it is. If some people get to finish their season, everyone should. We're already hearing that FA competitions like the FA Cup, Trophy and Vase are going to get finished at the start of next season instead, so that they get to wrap it up, so they get to complete their things because they're more important than our non-league league apparently. What about our league cups? Hashtag United. And this isn't about our club. I'm just using our situation to paint a picture of how one rule's not being applied for all of football. We were in 2 cups as well. We had a chance for a treble, but those 2 cups were league cups. They weren't FA Cup competitions, so they don't exist anymore. Where's the parity? And let's change the subject for a second, right? Let's be honest. We have already seen a handful of cases, and there's probably loads more we don't know about, of high-level, supposedly media-trained footballers break the social distancing rules. It's been all over the press, okay? We've already seen that. That is without these extra rules coming in. So do we really think that all of these players, every single player at every Premier League club, every Championship club, is going to come back to training and do what they're told? Because it only takes one player to break a rule, go somewhere he shouldn't, contract the virus, come back in for a test, have it, the whole thing stops. So unless you're actually going to isolate the players from day one, which I think there was talk of at one point, it won't work. Someone will ruin it. And then if you are isolating these players, you're asking them not to see their families and whatnot. Okay, is that different to what players do at World Cups and stuff? Maybe not. I think some players would be up for that challenge. Maybe some wouldn't. What if they've got a family member that's unhealthy? A lot of the reason that people are trying to get this season finished is because of contracts. It's because you could just say to the TV companies that bought the rights, look, we'll give you the games, but can you wait a little bit? We'll take it off what you asked for next year. I think you can make that work. There will be losses, but everyone's suffering losses right now. But it's ultimately because of contracts. Players are going to be out of contract and teams are like, or we started the season with this player, we shouldn't have to finish the season without this player. I actually think that's way lower priority. Okay, my club doesn't deal with contracts like that, but I still think if West Ham had to pick up their league season in 6 months and we didn't have, 2 or 3 of our players because they've been out of contract, well, that's the football club's job to go and sign new players in this time, right? They have become out of contract elsewhere. That's part of running a football club. I know it's not normal, but these are not normal times. I think that's better than playing under these circumstances, maybe playing with a few different players. Come on, we can deal with that. Half our teams change half their players every season anyway. It's not new for us as fans. And it's important again to stress that this has been designed to try and reduce the losses of the TV revenue for clubs. But we're also playing games that could, if they're played in the future, be done in front of fans. Because they're not in front of fans, there's a huge match day revenue loss for these clubs. Not only that, all these new safety measures, they come at a cost. Every club's got to have a COVID-19 officer. They've got to find a way of staffing and implementing all these testing. That's going to come at a cost as well. So basically, it's not going to be a case of, if we do these games, everything's okay. Now, one thing I would love to see, and I get why we can't, but I think to really make a decision of where you fall and whether this should be happening or not, we would need to see some sort of report that says this is going to be the economic loss if we don't stage these games. These are the people that are going to be out of work. And these are the clubs that might struggle to continue to exist. And this is the potential effect on the economy of football and the people that are involved in it. But if we do stage the games, this is the percentage increase of loss of life. Okay, and there is an increase of loss of life. There's not just the players, and we could lose a player from this, but also a player can infect someone else outside of their family. It can infect someone else and someone else and someone else, eventually getting to a vulnerable person that dies from it, right? So we need to really look at those two things. And whose job then is it to say these economic factors are more worthwhile saving these than it is to save these lives? I mean, I don't know who makes that decision. You'd like to think if a loss of life is a thing, then these things become irrelevant, right? I don't think that's what's happening here. And I talked about how one person getting the disease could just ruin the whole thing because it means that that team will have to go into isolation. What we haven't explored is one person dying from the disease, right? What happens then? If a player dies from this disease, can you imagine the lawsuits? Of course, the death is bad enough, right? But from a financial perspective, someone's getting sued for a lot of money. And I'm not just talking about the club losing a player. I'm talking about the player and his family losing a life. There is going to be some serious damage sought after if someone dies as a result of contracting this disease whilst playing in a league that probably should never have been restarted. So if you're worried about potential legal action from these clubs who might get relegated, what about the potential legal action from the players' families who might die? Personally, I think I made it pretty clear. I don't think the football should be coming back, right? But I am going to watch it if it's back. Does that make me a hypocrite? Yes, probably. But I'm also human. I think that's realistic. And I think this probably applies to a lot of you people watching. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I'm holier than thou. This is just what I think. If it was up to me right now and I could click a button that would ultimately decide what happens, I'd say, football, wait a few more months, please. We need to get these numbers down. We need to not have the second highest death rate in the world. And then we'll look at playing again. And trust me, I want these games to come back as much as anyone. For the Premier League and for all the leagues. I want to go and play with my mates again. We're all struggling right now. But we've also got to be realistic. And how many of you watching this that maybe disagree with me have had someone in your family directly affected by this disease? Because I think if you have, you're going to probably be more likely to agree. I also have one quite controversial thing I want to say as well. And I'm sure some of you are going to have a go at me for this, but I think it's worth saying. Do you guys know that people who are black or of ethnic minorities have twice the chance of dying from this disease if they get it, right? They have twice the chance. So as a result, we've seen people from that background, like Andros Townsend's dad has come out and he's said, I would feel unsafe with my son playing, knowing you've got double the chance of getting this illness, right? I'm just going to put this out there right now, and some of you are going to shoot me down, but would this even be contemplated if it was white people who had twice the chance of dying, right? Black and minority people, they're called minority ethnicities because there's less of them in this country. So it's a minority of people that, and maybe that minority is less a minority in football terms, but generally there's less people of those ethnic backgrounds involved in things in this country. That's why they're a minority. So theoretically, there's less black players, there's less ethnic minority players in the league. Therefore, that double chance of dying from this disease applies to less people in this instance than it would if they were white. If it was white people that had double the chance of dying, because ultimately the point I'm getting at is not just that there's more white people playing, the people making these decisions are mostly white, right? I'm not saying they're racist. I'm not saying they're inherently racist. I'm saying that potentially, unintentionally, and unconsciously, they are not taking into consideration a pretty important health statistic into this decision because it doesn't apply to them. That's something people need to think about as well. To end, I want to put something out there that I would love to come out of this situation as a potential positive. I don't think it will. I don't think the world's going to work this way. But if we were to try and use this world pandemic as a situation to sort out the future finances of football, this would be the perfect time to bring in a global salary cap. And if not a global one, there's one league that definitely needs one, and that's the Championship. Okay, the Championship is the most diseconomic league in the world. Doesn't make sense because there's so much money up for grabs if you get out of it. If you get into the Premier, I think the last valuation was £170 million it's worth to your club. Now that's going to come down, I imagine, in the future, particularly if TV revenue comes down. But right now, that's what it is. So what you get is you get teams in the Championship spending more than they can actually financially justify on a gamble that they will go up. And if they don't, it hurts them. That's why you see these teams mount these 2, 3, 4 year promotion campaigns. When they don't get it on that final year, you see them start to drop down because they've spent more money, and then the financial fair play kicks in and they have to make the books balance out. So they have to stop spending that money. Essentially, a bigger percentage of their total expenditure is in wages than makes sense for a future financial modelling of a club to keep existing. They're gambling they're going to get a massive influx, which of course only 3 teams a year are going to get. What a perfect opportunity when the whole of the world is affected by this to sort football out and bring in salary caps. And the MLS is not the best league in terms of quality, but American sports are very good at the financial side of running their leagues, and they have salary caps. They have designated player allowances, which allows you to break that cap for a certain amount of players, which I like as a rule. But imagine if at least the Championship, if not the whole world, brought in salary caps. Because you know what? It would really help in future instances like this. When clubs are facing this really bad situation financially, because they're like, look, we've got all this money committed in wages. We need to play games. We need to get fans through the door. We need our TV money or else we're going to go under. What better time to say, well, let's make sure it never happens again. And the problem with football, and it hasn't come in before, is because it's a world game. The minute the English leagues bring in a salary cap, all the good players are going to go to Russia or China or Italy or wherever that doesn't have a salary cap. So ideally it would come in everywhere. But at least under our control in England, let's bring one in for the Championship and the lower leagues. Because if we did have a salary cap, particularly if we had it worldwide, wouldn't it be amazing if a player chose to go to a club based on factors that aren't about the size of the owner's checkbook? Based on factors like, how good is their manager? How good a person is he? What sort of chairman do they have? Where in the world are they? Is that somewhere I'd like to live? Is there sort of culture in that city or town that appeals to me as an individual? How good are their players? How good are their youth system? If I'm a young player, am I going to get coached in the way that I want to be? All that stuff should be what makes a player choose to go to a club. Not how much money am I going to get. If you knew you were going to get the same money roughly wherever you go, then it would be other factors that decide the success of a club that are much more like the factors that started these clubs in the first place, namely their geography, their culture, the personality of a club and a place. That's what would apply to a player. So maybe that's a whole different video for the future about how we could learn from this instance and clean up football financially and not have to put players and people at risk. It's not just players, it's staff as well, by something like Project Restart, which seems, I think I've laid out in this video, why it just doesn't make sense. Correct me if I'm wrong. Throw me some comments down below if you think I've got this one way wrong and you have a different opinion of why it has to come back. But ultimately, all the other things aside, as far as I'm concerned, if one person gets COVID-19 during Project Restart, the league is, from a sporting integrity situation, irrelevant. It doesn't work. If you can't play all the games and you can't make people play with a player who's got COVID-19, then how can you do it? I don't think you can. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to put a poll on the screen right now. You guys can vote. Should Project Restart happen? Should football come back in the Premier League, or should we wait a few more months to see if the situation calms down? Let me know by clicking and voting on the poll in the top right of the screen. Drop a like on the video if you've enjoyed it. Let me know if you want to see more IMOs and what you'd like to see them on by leaving a comment. Subscribe, make sure you've got the notification bell turned on for future videos, and until next time, don't go changing. Stay safe, guys.